The rain came down in cold sheets, turning the city streets into black mirrors that caught and fractured the yellow glow of the street lamps. Mara Ellis tugged her faded navy jacket tighter and shouldered open the glass doors of Harrow and Pike Tower, her cleaning cart rattling behind her like a metal heartbeat. It was 11:30 p.m., and every inch of her ached from scrubbing conference rooms on the 17th floor. But exhaustion wasn't a luxury she could afford. Not when 7-year-old Jaden was waiting in her old Civic in the parking garage 2 blocks away, hunched over a math worksheet beneath the dome light like he did 3 nights a week. If she hurried, she could get him home, split a ham sandwich, and pray for 6 hours sleep before her breakfast shift at the diner. Mara pushed into the rain. Her sneakers slapped through shallow rivers that ran along the curb, the city muffled to a hiss. She cut down Ashland toward the garage and froze. A man lay crumpled on the sidewalk 20 yards ahead, twisted at an angle that was wrong in a way the body knows before the mind can say it. The white of his dress shirt was no longer white. A dark bloom spread from his side, made slick and black by rain. A metal badge caught the streetlight and flashed weakly. Police. His radio crackled with lonely static, and beyond that, nothing. No footsteps, no voices, no passing cars. Just rain and a life leaking into the gutter. Mara's first instinct was to keep walking. Jaden, get to the car. Get home. Don't see this. Don't let this become your problem. If somebody did this, they could still be close. In this city, fear wasn't paranoia. It was survival. But his chest rose, barely, and fell. The smallest movement. The proof that choices still mattered. She swallowed, pulled out her phone with trembling fingers, and punched 911. "There's an officer down," she said, forcing the words through a throat that had gone tight. "Corner of Ashland and Mercer. He's bleeding, a lot. Please hurry." "Is he conscious?" the dispatcher asked, a calm anchor in the storm. I don't know. He's breathing." "Oh, God." The phone slipped to her shoulder as she dropped to her knees. The concrete was a block of ice beneath her, soaking through her jeans in a heartbeat. "Where is the blood coming from?" the voice asked. Mara peeled back the torn fabric at his side, and heat flooded her palm. He let out a ragged groan. "Right flank. Deep," she said, pressing hard. Her hands were small, but she made them iron. His eyes fluttered open. Blue, glassy, lost. They found hers and tried to focus. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Help is coming. I'm not going anywhere." His fingers twitched, searching, then closed around her free hand. They were cold, shock cold. His lips moved. She leaned closer, rain pinning strands of hair to her cheeks. "Low. Locker. 3. 1. 4. He breathed, the words a thread. "Not an accident." Mara blinked. "What? Locker 314? Whose locker?" But his eyes slipped shut again, and the rain swallowed his answer. Sirens were just a rumor in the distance. Okay. She glanced up and down the empty street, heart banging against her ribs. Think. She needed to keep pressure, keep talking, keep him tethered to this side of the dark. "My son's name is Jaden," she said, voice shaking. "He's waiting for me in the car, and he hates broccoli and loves dinosaurs and will not forgive me if I let you quit. So you need to breathe. You hear me? In. Out." A shadow moved at the mouth of the alley across the street. Mara's breath snagged. Then a gust shoved a trash bag into view. Nothing. No one. Still, the fear slicked up her spine. "Ambulance is 3 minutes out," the dispatcher said. "Ma'am, if you can, keep applying pressure. Is there an exit wound?" "Don't think so," she managed. There's a badge." She squinted through the rain-washed sheen of his ID. "Hart, L. Officer Hart Liam, stay with me, okay? Stay with me." His grip softened. Tell Evelyn." "Dad," he rasped. "You can tell them yourself," Mara said, pressing harder, tasting metal in the air from the blood, rain, and fear. "But you have to fight." Sirens grew teeth. Blue and red slashed across the wet street as an ambulance fishtailed to the curb. 2 paramedics were on him before Mara could exhale. A woman with steady hands and a buzz cut, a man already reading vitals. They worked fast, moving with the swift choreography of people who had memorized what it takes to steal someone back from the edge. "You found him?" the woman asked, slicing open the ruined shirt. "Yes." Mara's voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone braver. "You saved his life," the paramedic said, meeting Mara's eyes for a beat that landed like a hand to the shoulder. "Without pressure, he'd have bled out." They lifted him, the stretcher bumping up over the curb lip. "Which hospital?" Mara heard herself ask. "St. Michael's," the paramedic called, climbing aboard. "He's critical, but he's got a shot." The doors slammed. The siren howled. The ambulance tore away, leaving the rain to wash the sidewalk clean of everything except the heat that still burned in Mara's palms. 2 blocks. Her whole body trembled as she ran for the garage. When she yanked open the Civic's door, Jaden looked up, pencil frozen mid-equation. "Mama, you're soaked." "We're going to the hospital," she said, swallowing the shake in her voice. "I'll explain on the way." She drove with both hands and all her will, wipers thrashing, hazards clicking like a metronome for panic. She told Jaden the short version. A man hurt, a badge, a choice. How sometimes you don't walk past because kindness is the only thing you can live with afterward. "You did the right thing," he said, small hand squeezing her wrist. "Even if I don't like broccoli." A laugh broke out of her like a hiccup. She took the corner too fast anyway. St. Michael's emergency bay was a fluorescent aquarium of motion and bad news. The air smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Mara's shoes chirped on the polished floor as she signed in at the desk with shaking fingers. "Officer Liam Hart," she said. "He just came in. I was with him. Is he—" "Are you family?" the triage nurse asked, gentle but fenced. "No, I found him. I stayed. Have a seat. Someone will update you." There are different kinds of waiting, and this was the kind with edges. The TV in the corner showed a muted news crawl about a downtown substation burglary she barely registered. Jaden leaned into her side, warm and real and alive. Midnight bled into 12:30. Her phone buzzed with a text from Opal, the morning shift manager at the diner. "Can you take the 5 a.m. too?" She typed family emergency and hit send before doubt could argue. At 1:42, the automatic doors parted and a couple in their 50s all but ran to the desk. The man had rain glistening in the grooves of a face built for grit. The woman clutched a coat to her chest like armor. "Our son, Liam Hart," the man said. "We were called—" "Mr. and Mrs. Hart," the nurse said, standing. "He's in surgery. The doctor will speak to you as soon as he can." They sat opposite Mara, hands knotted together, the woman's knuckles white. It felt wrong, like watching someone pray through a keyhole. But Mara couldn't leave. Not when those blue eyes still floated in her head, pleading and stubborn all at once. She stood. "I'm Mara," she said softly. I found him." The woman looked up, eyes already raw. "You found my boy?" "I called 911 and tried to stop the bleeding." The woman, Evelyn, was on her feet, taking Mara's hands like she could read history in their smears. "Thank you," she said, voice wrecked. "God, thank you." The man, Gordon, nodded once. The kind of nod men use when they're hanging from a ledge and trying not to look down. "If he pulls through, it's because you didn't pass by." Mara shook her head. "Anyone would." "No," he said simply. "They wouldn't." Time buckled again. At 2:31, a surgeon in green stepped into the waiting room and said, "Hart family?" As if he hadn't just become gravity. Evelyn's fingers crushed Mara's. Gordon rose like a man bracing for impact. "He's stable," the doctor said. "We repaired a laceration to the liver and a perforation near the kidney. He lost a great deal of blood, but he's young, and he fought. He's got a road ahead, but tonight he gets to have one." Evelyn folded, relief knocking the breath out of her. Gordon caught her, eyes closing like a dam he'd been holding, finally had permission to crack. Can we see him?" Evelyn asked. "In recovery in an hour." The doctor's gaze flicked to Mara's rain-plastered hair, the rust-dark stains on her jacket. "Were you with him?" "Yes," she said. "Then you should tell him yourself," he said. "He'll want to hear your voice again." When the nurse finally led them down the long white corridor, the room at the end looked like a different weather. warm, humming, alive. Liam lay against a halo of pillows, skin the color of unbaked bread, but no longer sheet white. Tubes, monitors, those soft beeps that mean stay. Evelyn went to him like a tide. "Baby," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "My sweet boy." Gordon stood near his boots, one hand resting on the blanket over his shin, as if anchoring him to this side. Mara hovered by the door with Jaden, feeling both too big for the room and too small for the moment. Liam's eyes fluttered, then opened. They were the same blue but clearer now, more here. They moved from his mother to his father, and then, improbably, found Mara in the doorway. They widened a fraction, a spark of recognition flaring through the medicated fog. "You," he said, voice rough gravel. "You stayed." Mara swallowed the lump in her throat. "I told you I would." He tried to smile and winced. "Thank you." She could have said 100 things. "It's nothing. Anyone would have. You scared me." But what came out was, "You said locker 314. Does that mean something?" Gordon's head snapped up. Evelyn's brows knit. Liam's gaze sharpened, a shadow moving behind the blue. "Bodycam," he breathed. "Locker, not an accident." The room seemed to tilt. Mara felt the hairs rise on her arms. Gordon stepped closer, a new current sharpening his eyes. "Son, we'll talk when you're stronger. Rest." But Mara had already seen something coiled there. Fear, yes, but also a warning from a man who knew the difference between bad luck and a setup. She thought about the news crawl, the substation burglary, about the radio that had crackled but not called, about how no cars had passed on a street that was never quite that empty. Evelyn turned to Mara again, the gratitude in her face sticky with tears. "How can we ever repay?" "You don't owe me anything," Mara said quickly, suddenly embarrassed by the rawness of it all. She looked at Jaden, who stood in his oversized hoodie, fingers tucked into his sleeves, trying to be brave. Rent was past due. The diner would be short a hand at dawn. Her life had been a constant math problem. Scarcity plus fear equals survival. But there, in the soft beep of a heart monitor and the rasp of a first safe breath, something shifted. A decision is a door. Sometimes you don't know what room it opens until you step through. "Let us do something for you," Gordon said, voice rough from more than weather. "Please." Mara almost said no. Pride has a way of sounding like dignity when you've had to make do for too long. But Jaden leaned into her side, and she remembered the weight of a stranger's blood warming her palm. "Maybe a ride home," she said, finally letting herself breathe. "My car's in the garage and it's late." "Done," Gordon said. "And after that, we talk." Mara nodded, eyes returning to Liam. "Get some rest, Officer Hart. You've got a lot of people waiting on you." For a heartbeat, those blue eyes softened around a private smile. "Liam," he corrected, a whisper like a promise. And then the meds tugged him under, gentle and sure. Mara stood there a moment longer, memorizing the sound of the monitors, the hush of the hospital, the shape of a night that had split her life into before and after. Outside, the rain kept washing the city clean. Inside, something like hope threaded itself through the fear and refused to let go. If a stranger was bleeding out in the dark and your child was waiting in the car, would you stop? Tell me what you would do, then stick around. This story doesn't end at the hospital doors. Morning came in a pewter haze, the rain finally spent, the city blinking awake like a boxer after the bell. Mara didn't sleep. She sat at the small kitchen table while Jaden snored softly on the couch, his math workbook still open to a page of long division. Her ruined jacket hung over a chair, drying into a map of brown and rust. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw blue. Liam's eyes finding hers, the monitors blinking, the glint of a badge under streetlight. At 7:12 a.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Evelyn Hart. We don't know how to thank you. Please come by St. Michael's at 10? Gordon and I would like to speak with you, properly. Liam is asking for the woman who stayed." Mara typed, erased, typed again. Mara. "I'll be there. I have my diner shift at noon, so I can come for a little while." She didn't add that missing the shift would topple the carefully stacked dominoes of her week. She didn't have to, because 10 minutes later her phone buzzed again. Opal, diner. Baby, I saw the news. If you're anywhere near that mess, don't you worry about today. I'll cover. Come back tomorrow with both kidneys and your smile. Mara let out a shaky laugh that turned quick to tears. The world was still sharp, but the edges had patted themselves a bit. By 9:52, she and Jaden were back at St. Michael's. Fingers laced, coats zipped against a wind that had opinions. The waiting room was calmer now. The night's chaos had folded into the quiet exhaustion of day. Evelyn met them at the sliding doors, her face still soft from crying, but lit from within by something that looked like gratitude remade as joy. She hugged Mara like a daughter. Jaden stiffened, then relaxed when she bent to his height. You must be Jaden, she said. I'm Evelyn. I've got the brownies of a woman who bakes when she worries. Would you help me test them so I don't poison the whole ward? Jaden looked at Mara. Can I? And when Mara nodded, he nodded back with solemn, 7-year-old grace. I'm good at testing, he said. Gordon was waiting outside Liam's room, a thick hand wrapped around a paper cup that had lost the battle with time. The man looked like a fence post in a storm, weathered but unbowed. When he saw Mara, he stood straighter. He's awake, Gordon said. Not for long stretches, but awake. Mara smoothed a non-existent wrinkle from the hem of her sweater and stepped inside. Liam looked better, which mainly meant he looked less like he'd fallen out of a page of history. The pallor had softened. There was a hint of human pink returning to his lips. When his eyes turned, they found her like they'd been waiting. Mara, he said, voice a sanded-down version of last night's gravel. Liam, she said, and it felt odd and right to speak his name. You look less dead. A huff of a laugh tugged at his mouth. High praise. Your mom's feeding my son brownies, which means your family's already spoiling us rotten. Good, he said, and something warm flickered underneath the pain. You saved me. They'll spend the rest of their lives trying to make that feel even. She shook her head. You don't owe me anything. Not how my folks are built. He studied her a beat. Not how I'm built either. A nurse swept in with the kind of competent cheer that makes a person believe in small gods. Vitals officer Hart, then less flirting and more resting. Mara stepped back, but Liam caught her wrist before she could. Locker 314, he murmured, the words knitting the room tighter. Top row, second bank in the 7th precinct. My bodycam's there. It wasn't on the log when they brought me in. His gaze sharpened, a flash of the cop who'd survived more nights than this one. Tell Detective Sloane Rivera, Internal Affairs. She's the only one I trust. Why me? Mara asked, throat dry. Because someone turned the street quiet, he said, eyes holding hers. The calls never reached dispatch. Somebody jammed us or ghosted us. Someone knew where I'd be and when. If I request IA from this bed, it'll travel through 2 hands I don't trust. You're not in the system. The nurse cleared her throat. Last 30 seconds, she sing-songed, not unkindly. Liam squeezed her wrist once, then let go. Tell Rivera I didn't slip. Tell her locker 314 and that what happened is tied to the substation hit last week. He swallowed, jaw tight. And tell her heart says barn swallow. She'll know. Mara nodded, brain already building a scaffold out of words she didn't fully understand. I'll go now. She found Evelyn and Gordon in the hallway with Jaden, who had chocolate at the corner of his mouth, and the complicated moral satisfaction of a boy who had successfully eaten dessert before lunch. How is he? Evelyn asked. The nurse yelled at him for flirting, Mara said, buying herself a heartbeat, then lower. He asked me to contact someone in Internal Affairs. Privately. Gordon's eyes narrowed, a storm moving through slate. Rivera, Mara blinked. Yes. Good, he said, like the word had weight. Sloane's clean. If Liam trusts her, so do I. Evelyn glanced between them, reading depths without being invited into them. Gordon, she said gently, a reminder and a warning in one. He nodded, took out his phone, and texted with the speed of a man who still knew how to make things happen without telling the whole room what he was making. Rivera will meet you, he said to Mara after a short exchange. Coffee shop across from the precinct. Noon, her note said to say nothing to anyone else. Mara pressed her lips together. Okay. Then because the ground felt like it was rearranging itself under her feet, she said, I have to pick up Jaden after. We can't be out all day. We'll take him, Evelyn said without hesitation. He can come help me run brownies to the nurse's station, and Gordon can teach him chess. Jaden's eyes went star-bright. Chess? Gordon crouched to his level. You like knights? Only the dinosaur kind, Jaden confessed. Knights hop like dinosaurs, Gordon said solemnly. You'll see. Mara smiled despite herself. I'll be back in an hour, she told her son. Listen to Evelyn. Don't, eat the hospital. Yes, ma'am, Jaden intoned, then leaned into her for a quick hug that smelled like cocoa and boy. The coffee shop across from the 7th Precinct was the kind of place cops like. Plain, cheap, no pretensions. A woman in a charcoal suit sat by the window with a view of both entrances. She was mid-30s, hair pulled back, eyes like notepaper. Blank until you wrote something on them, then impossible to erase. Sloan Rivera, she said as Mara approached, offering a hand and a card in the same motion. You're Mara. I am. Mara shook. He said to tell you, barn swallow. Rivera's posture shifted by a degree only a dancer or a detective would notice. Then let's assume we have 3 minutes before this room stops being anonymous. She slid a small audio recorder across the table. Tell me everything Liam said from the sidewalk to the hospital. Mara did. The rain, the wound, locker 314, the knot accident, the substation hit, the way the street had been empty when it shouldn't have been. She kept it clean, no self-mythology, just facts wrapped in the warmth of a voice that wouldn't let a stranger die. Rivera listened without interrupting, then clicked off the recorder and tucked it into her inner pocket. You have a good memory, she said. That matters. I have a son, Mara replied. You learn to notice what keeps him safe. A corner of Rivera's mouth lifted, like someone testing a smile for size. The body cam being off the log is bad. Locker 314 is on the IA audit list after a tip about missing narcotics. And the substation hit? She tapped her temple. We think it wasn't copper thieves. We think someone wanted the city dark in a radius you could walk. So someone could hurt a cop and make it look like chance, Mara said, feeling the cold find her bones again. Or make it look like a message, Rivera said. Either way, you stepping in last night broke someone's clean line. They will not like that. The bell on the door chimed. 2 uniforms walked in, laughing about a game. Rivera didn't look at them, which is how Mara knew she'd noticed them the second the bell sounded. From here on out, Rivera said, voice lower, you speak to me or to no one. If anyone from the department approaches you outside of me, you call this number. She slid another card across, unmarked, just a number, and the name SR handwritten. If something feels wrong, you leave. Is Liam safe? Mara asked. Rivera held her gaze. As safe as I can make him. A beat. You did good, Miss Ellis, yesterday and today. Outside, the wind had sharpened. Mara zipped her jacket and crossed back toward a life that was pretending to be ordinary, while the ground under it decided what it wanted to be next. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She fished it out without breaking stride, then stopped dead on the curb. Unknown number. A text bubble. Keep your mouth shut. 314 isn't safe. Neither are you. For a second, the world went soundless. Then the honk of a bus, the murmur of a line at the pharmacy, the slap of her heart in her ears. She took a screenshot, shoved the phone back into her pocket, and walked faster, resisting the urge to run. Don't bleed fear in public. Predators smell it. At St. Michael's, Jaden sat with Gordon at a cafeteria table, a chessboard between them. Jaden's brow was furrowed in heroic concentration. The horse goes in L's, he announced as Mara approached. Like leaping lizard, Gordon said gravely, and Jaden beamed like he'd been let into a secret society. Evelyn pressed a lidded cup into Mara's hand, tea hot enough to sear the doubt back into its cave. How did it go? She asked. Good, Mara lied with a smile. Detective Rivera is steady. Then we'll be steady too, Evelyn said, reading more than Mara had said and less than Mara had experienced. Gordon glanced up, eyes flicking over Mara's face like a scanner. She held his gaze, then angled the phone so only he could see the screenshot. His jaw flexed. He tapped a finger to the table twice. Copy received, then applied his entire attention to moving a rook like it was a ritual. Jaden is a ringer, he said for the air. He'll beat me by Christmas. I will, Jaden agreed, untroubled by modesty. They visited Liam again. He was sleeping, which felt like the kindest thing the day had offered. On the way out, Evelyn touched Mara's arm. Come for dinner tonight, she said. Nothing fancy, just stew and too many opinions. You saved our son. Let us feed yours. I have the diner at 5 tomorrow, Mara started. Tonight, Evelyn repeated softly. Please. Mara thought about her fridge. 2 eggs, a lemon, half a jar of pickles. She thought about the rent notice folded like a secret under a stack of mail. She thought about the text that still burned her pocket and the fact that monsters always tell you your voice is dangerous when they need your silence to survive. Okay, she said. We'll come. They walked home in a light the color of second chances. Jaden skipped, chess knight in one hand like a prize. Mama, he said, breathless, Mr. Hart says knights are strongest when they look weak, because people forget to watch the corners. Does he now? Mara said, squeezing his fingers. She glanced up at the slice of sky between buildings, at the gulls wheeling like scraps of paper in the wind. That afternoon, she texted Opal and asked for another day off. Opal sent back a string of hearts and a photo of a coffee mug that said, "Try me" in block letters. Mara cleaned the apartment with the kind of thoroughness only the poor or the newly terrified can muster. She set the table with the good plates they'd found at a church sale and a bouquet of grocery store carnations that insisted on calling themselves peonies in the right light. At 6, the hearts arrived with stew that smelled like Sundays and a loaf of bread that fought back when sliced. In their presence, the tiny apartment felt less small and more full. Gordon taught Jaden how to tear bread without shrapnel. Evelyn asked Mara questions whose answers she actually wanted. Where did you grow up? South Side, 4 apartments, 1 long hallway of bad decisions. What did you want to be at 7? An astronaut, then a librarian. Turns out both require a type of quiet I didn't have. And now? Now I want my son to have options I never did, which means I want steadiness and sleep. Evelyn's eyes warmed. We can help with steadiness. Gordon cleared his throat. I run facilities for Heartstone Hospitality, he said casually, as if the chain's name didn't appear on 15 buildings she scrubbed by muscle memory. We need a concierge with instincts for people and a spine for chaos. Hours are sane. Pay is, too. You're overqualified. I've never worked a front desk, Mara said, a reflex of a life lived making herself small enough to fit through doors. You've run your life, Evelyn said. You read rooms. You soothe the dying man with your voice. We can teach you a software system. We can't teach heart. Mara opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Jaden's school, childcare. Day shift, Gordon said, Monday through Friday. We also have a partnership with the Riverside Youth Center right across from the property. After-school program, art classes, scholarships. Jaden's head snapped up. Art? Paint, Evelyn said conspiratorially. And clay, and a teacher named Miss Rami who believes every kid is secretly a masterpiece. Mara laughed, which felt dangerously like crying. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Jaden whispered, eyes wide. Mara looked at her son, at the ring of stew damp on his lip, at the knight he'd placed carefully by his water glass to watch over dinner. She looked at the couple who had raised a man who said barn swallow to mean, I'm not alone in this fight. She looked at the life she had been hauling uphill for years, and the hands stretched down from above, not to pull her past but to pull her level. Yes, she said, and the word filled the apartment like a hymn. Yes. They stayed late, because the kind of talking they did makes clocks irrelevant. When the door finally shut behind them, the apartment felt different, as if someone had turned on a lamp in a corner she hadn't known was wired. Mara washed the bowls, humming under her breath, the good kind of tired settling into her bones. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Another unknown number. She wiped her hands and swiped. Last warning, 314, bury it or we bury you. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she took a breath that came from somewhere lower than fear and forwarded the screenshot to the unmarked number on Rivera's card. Mara, received this after our meeting. I am not burying anything. 3 dots pulsed, stopped, pulled back. Then, SR. Good. Doors are opening. Be careful which ones you walk through. I've doubled security on Liam. Mara turned off the kitchen light and stood in the doorway to Jaden's room. He slept hard, one hand above his head, night tucked under his pillow like a guardian. She checked the deadbolt, slid the chain, wedged the doorstop the way she always did on nights that felt like tests. On her way to bed, she paused at the window. The city breathed. Somewhere in it, bad men were unsettled because a cleaning lady hadn't walked past. Somewhere else, a detective was moving pieces on a board most people never see. Mara touched the cold glass. Nights, she whispered, strongest at the corners. Outside, a siren rose and fell. Not quite a cry, not quite a song. Inside, Mara lay down in the dark and let the future sit on the edge of the bed like a cat, patient, inscrutable, already hers. By Tuesday, the storm had moved to headlines. Officer attacked near power outage zone, scrolled across morning news tickers, the anchors skating politely around anything that smelled like conspiracy. Mara brewed coffee she couldn't taste, knotted Jaden's scarf twice, and kissed his forehead a third time because the apartment felt full of eyes, even with the blinds drawn. Her phone lit. SR. We moved today. Meet me 1 p.m. South entrance, 7th precinct. Low profile. No detours. Mara typed back, I'll be there. At 8:15, she started her first day of not scrubbing. Hearthstone's downtown property, lobby white as a promise, the air perfumed with lilies and expensive decisions. The front desk manager, a poised woman named Clarice, walked Mara through the system. Reservations, incident logs, a screen of little squares that represented rooms she could now solve like puzzles. It felt alien and right. People approached with problems and left with thanks. By 12:40, Clarice squeezed her shoulder. Go. You've done more in 4 hours than most do in 4 weeks. Outside, the precinct crouched like a brick animal. Alert, public, pretending to be simple. Rivera appeared at Mara's side the way a shadow chooses a body. No greeting, just a nod toward the service quarter. Locker rooms this way, Rivera said, voice pitched low. We'll look like we belong until someone needs us not to. What happens if someone needs us not to? Mara asked, keeping pace. Then you keep walking, Rivera said. Let me buy the argument. The locker room smelled like old soap and new tension. Metal doors lined the walls in strict ranks. Rivera's badge flashed at a passing sergeant. Internal, she said, and the man's face arranged itself into cooperation. They stopped at the second bank, top row, third from the right. 3:14. Rivera donned nitrile gloves, slid a slim pry bar from her blazer like a magician with a mean trick, and popped the hasp with surgical politeness. Inside, folded uniforms, a spare pair of boots, a stack of neatly labeled notebooks, a velvet bag the size of a grapefruit, and empty space where a body cam should have been. Rivera didn't swear. She blinked once, long and slow, and then reached for the velvet bag. Inside sat a heavy rectangular object wrapped in a microfiber cloth. She unrolled it like a relic, a body cam, not logged, not missing, hidden. Smart boy, Rivera murmured. He knew someone would wipe the log. He put the camera where only a paranoid version of me would look. She held it up. The red diode slept. Power, she said, half to herself, half to the gods of chain of custody, and pressed. The light woke, pulsed, then steadied. Play, Rivera said, and the tiny screen gave them last night in a series of haunted inches. Liam's boots on wet pavement, his breath in the mic, the jitter of motion as he took a corner. A voice distorted by rain and adrenaline. Unit 47, checking the 300 block of Ashland. Then static. Not the normal kind. This was a curtain being pulled shut. 2 figures slid out of shadow, faces obscured by hoods, movements too confident for amateurs. One raised a device the size of a paperback, black, bristling with short antennas. The other spoke, clear enough to hear shape if not syllable. Now. There was a scuffle, Liam's grunt, the camera smearing light into pain, the cough of a suppressed shot or a baton hit that hit wrong. The ground accelerated toward the lens. Then the view went sideways and fixed on a rectangle of sky that blinked rain. Through it, a street lamp, a badge glint, a hand, Mara's entering frame, pressing down, refusing to let go. Her voice came thin but steady through the tiny speaker. Stay with me. Mara wasn't ready for the feeling of seeing herself from the outside, like being both ghost and witness. She swallowed hard. Rivera hit pause, exhaled through her nose. Signal killer, she said. Jammer tuned for city band. And that left-hand grip, see the patch? That's a private security uniform. Greyhawk. She looked at Mara. Greyhawks on 2 city contracts, utilities, and precinct overflow. Meaning? Mara asked, though she already feared she knew. Meaning someone in a company paid by the city to keep the city safe turned off the city so they could hurt a cop, Rivera said, and someone in blue let them. The locker room door creaked. Rivera's eyes flicked there. Her hand moved, fluid, casual, to pocket the camera and relock the door with the kind of speed that only comes from long practice. 2 uniforms entered mid-laugh, the sound drying when they saw internal affairs like a stain. They nodded, performed polite innocence, and left. The door swung shut again. Time to go, Rivera said. We have what we need. They walked the corridor like civilians who had nothing to hide. Outside, the winter light was bright enough to bruise. Rivera took Mara's elbow, gentle as a warning. They'll know the camera is missing within the hour, she said. They'll suspect Liam hit it, and they'll look for who helped him. You go straight to work. You act like your life is exactly what it was yesterday. I'll handle the rest. What about the techs? Mara asked. I've notified Cyber, Rivera said. We'll try to trace, but cowards use one-time relays. Stay with people. Don't walk the same route twice this week. And at home? Barricade like you were raised by a woman who watched the news? Mara almost laughed. I was. Back at the hotel, problems were blessedly small. A guest wanted extra towels. A printer jammed on floor 12. A honeymooner lost his ring and found it again in the lining of his coat after Mara asked him what he'd been doing the last time he was sure he had it, and he remembered showing it to the bartender with grand flourishes. People teared up at the sound of their own competence. Mara liked being the person who handed it back to them. At 4:06, Clarice appeared with an envelope. From Mrs. Hart, she said, conspiratorial. Dropped by like a queen and left this for you like you were family. Inside, a Riverside Youth Center brochure folded around a note in Evelyn's looping hand. Enrollment secured for Jaden. Starts Monday. Art on Tuesdays. Chess on Thursdays. We cleared it with his current school. Don't fight me. You've got a bigger fight. E. Beneath it, a second sheet. Also, stew in your fridge. Heated it in your oven so the apartment smells like home when you arrive. Keys were with Gordon because your deadbolt needed replacing. We replaced it. Hope that's okay. Mara pressed the paper to her sternum. The hotel lobby blurred, then settled. It's okay, she whispered to no one, to everyone. She left at 6 in a blue that hinted at snow. Jaden barreled across the lobby from the youth center van, cheeks bright, a smear of green paint on his knuckle like proof. Mom, Miss Rami says I can paint a dinosaur city. Also, Mr. Gordon says nights are even stronger when queens are near. Mr. Gordon is very wise, Mara said, eyes scanning the street without turning her head. Home. On the 3rd floor landing, she stopped. The apartment door looked new. The deadbolt shone. A small, discreet camera now watched the hallway from above the jam. Heartstone grade, expensive, patient. There was a sticky note under it, a little yellow square with handwriting that had thrived under decades of grocery lists and field trip forms. Smile. You're safe. E. Inside, the air smelled like rosemary and something that wanted to be Sunday. A casserole sat warming in the oven. On the kitchen counter, a chessboard. The knight exactly where Jaden had left it, except now it was made of marble, not plastic. A quiet upgrade with a little card tucked beneath. For corners. G. Mara locked the new deadbolt, slid the chain, set the doorstop. Old habits, new hardware. They were halfway through stew when someone knocked. A careful knock, the kind cops use when they want to put you at ease. Mara's muscles coiled. She checked the peephole. Rivera, alone, her posture broadcasting neutral, not urgent like a lighthouse. Mara opened, chain on. Everything okay? Better than okay, Rivera said. We pulled Greyhawk's site supervisor in for a routine audit. He folded faster than a paper crane in a bath. We have names. We have the jammer. We have a chain that leads to a contract officer who gets paid too much for a man who doesn't like boats. Will fix it? Mara asked. It will rock it, Rivera said. Fixing takes time. But tonight the right people don't sleep. She hesitated, then added quieter. Your texts spooked them. You didn't run. That matters. Jaden appeared at her hip. Hi, he said to Rivera, solemn as a bailiff. Hi, Rivera said, equally solemn. Are you any good at nights? The best, he said. Good, Rivera said. We need nights. After she left, the apartment hummed with a kind of fragile peace Mara didn't trust yet, but was willing to sit with. She ran Jaden's bath, scrubbed paint from his fingernails, listened to the day's art drama about who got the good brushes and how he'd solved this tragedy with diplomacy and a promise to share the dinosaur book tomorrow. When he was asleep, she stood at the window. Snow was beginning. A hush cut into pieces. Her phone vibrated. Liam Hart. Nurse says I'm handsome, which is comforting bias. Heard you were brave twice. Thank you. Also, if my parents fed you stew without my presence, I'm filing a complaint. Mara smiled, the kind that happens to a person who is surprised by their own face. Focus on healing. We'll smuggle stew. 3 dots danced. Detective says Greyhawk blinked. I owe you and Rivera and some very tired angels. Also, for the record, I didn't say flirting today. The nurse did. I am an innocent man, mostly. Mara typed, erased, then finally sent. Get some sleep, Liam. After a beat, I'm glad you fought. His reply came quick. I fought because you told me to. She put the phone down and let the quiet sit next to her like a friend. The city outside looked new again under the first powder of snow. Every edge softened, every wrong made temporarily less sharp. She knew morning would melt that softness. Bills would still exist. Men who hated light would still wake vengeful. But tonight, a corrupt circle had bent. A boy had painted a dinosaur city. A deadbolt had been replaced. A detective had smiled. A cop had lived. Choices are doors. Mara had walked through one in the rain. On the other side, there were more. She was still scared, but fear wasn't the same thing as retreat. She turned off the lamp. Nights, she whispered into the dim. Corners. By Wednesday dawn, the city wore snow like a bandage. Mara woke to a phone buzzing on the nightstand and the faint clack of sleet against the window. Her heart did the sprint it always did before news. She checked the screen. SR, game day, stay reachable. Keep Jaden routine. Don't post. Don't peek. When it breaks loud. Mara exhaled. Routine meant breakfast, mittens, and the argument about whether dinosaurs would like oatmeal. Jaden insisted even velociraptors enjoyed cinnamon. She walked him to the riverside van, hugged him twice, and watched him go with the chest ache of a mother stitching courage over fear. At Hearthstone, the lobby pulsed with winter coats and the air of people wanting hot coffee and easy answers. Clarice nodded her toward the desk with an approving tilt of the chin. You have a gift, she murmured, and in a day full of other people's crises, Mara let that sentence be a pocket-sized shore. At 10:13, the first thunderclap hit. Every TV in the lobby cut to a live feed. A podium at City Hall, microphones clustered like startled birds. The police chief, square-jawed and newly careful, stepped up beside a woman in charcoal with her hair pulled back, Detective Sloan Rivera, and a deputy district attorney whose suit screamed, I don't lose often. Rivera did the talking. Calm, precise. She laid out the chain like a map. A no-bid utilities security subcontract to Greyhawk. A precinct overflow contract authorized by a liaison officer named Captain Dane Roth. A portable signal jammer tuned to quiet a radius of blocks. A power maintenance test that created convenient darkness. And the assault of Officer Liam Hart after he interfered with what Greyhawk personnel described as asset collection. The phrase curled in the air like smoke. And we would not have this evidence, Rivera said, without 2 acts of courage. Officer Hart hiding his own Bodycam in a secondary compartment, locker 314, and a civilian who refused to walk past, then refused to be quiet. Mara felt heat rush her face as if a spotlight had swung across the lobby and found her. Clarice gripped her forearm. A quiet, you're safe. Cameras flashed. Reporters threw questions like darts. The DA took the lectern. Arrest warrants have been issued for Captain Roth and 3 Greyhawk supervisors, Cade Mercer, Pilar Young, and Noel Greeley. We have moved to suspend the Greyhawk contracts pending review. Someone shouted, "How did Internal Affairs get a body cam if it wasn't logged?" Rivera didn't smile, but her eyes did. "Because nights are strongest at the corners," she said, and somewhere in a youth center van clipping through town, a boy in a puffer jacket sat straighter without knowing why. The lobby erupted in a soft, human way, guests murmuring, staff exchanging glances, a bellhop whispering "damn" beneath his breath like a prayer. Clarice leaned in. "Take 10, she said. "Breathe. This is your storm too." Outside, the snow made soft threats. Mara stood under the hotel's awning and let the cold chew at her worry. Her phone buzzed again. "Evelyn, we're at the hospital watching. Your name didn't air, but I am saying it to everyone with a coffee in their hand. Come by after your shift. We'll bring Jaden. He wants to show Liam a chess move called the fork. Apparently it's violent." Mara laughed, a startled sound. She texted back a heart and tucked the phone away, then noticed the black sedan idling too long across the street. The back window lowered 2 inches. A slice of a face. A flash of a phone raised like an eye. She didn't run. She turned and walked back inside, not hurrying, letting the cameras above the door get a clear look. Clarice saw her expression and didn't ask questions. She simply pressed a button under the desk. Nothing dramatic, just the quiet summoning of Hearthstone's head of security. A woman named Jen, with forearms like rebar and a voice like new snow. "Escort?" Jen asked, already deciding the answer. "Home, then to St. Michael's," Mara said. "2 cars," Jen replied, checking feeds on her tablet. "Will make any sedans with opinions hate their day." By 3, the internet had decided it knew parts of the story. Threads bloomed with people who loved cops and people who didn't, with union reps and city contract truthers, with a photo of a mysterious Good Samaritan distorted into a dozen false faces. Rivera texted, "Stay dark." Mara obeyed, working the desk with the calm of someone who has decided the narrow path forward is the only one that lets you sleep. At 5, the escort team got her to the hospital, while the black sedan discovered it had somewhere else to be. On the 3rd floor, a different kind of war room waited. Gordon with a printout of the DA's filing he pretended not to watch as if it were sports. Evelyn with a thermos of tea she had poured hope into until it steeped. And Liam propped against pillows, color back in his cheeks. Eyes of blue that now looked like presence, not absence. Jaden burst into the room, planted a marble knight on the tray table, and announced, "Mr. Liam, I can attack you twice with one move. It's called a fork. Mama says it's only legal on chessboards." Liam's laugh was sunlight. "Show me." They played on a pocket board while Evelyn fussed, and Gordon said, a lot, and Rivera slipped in with a nod so small only Mara felt it land. Sloane stood at the foot of the bed and gave Liam the short version. "Roth's in cuffs. Greyhawk's counsel is bargaining like a man with a suitcase of snakes. The jammer tested dirty in front of a judge. The city's about to pretend it knew less than it did. The rest will take months, but the headlines tonight won't lie." Liam swallowed, eyes shining. He looked to Mara. She shrugged one shoulder. "Your turn." "Thank you," he said to Rivera, but he was looking at Mara. "For finding me, for not letting me be a headline that hurt my parents alone." "I told you to breathe," Mara said, suddenly shy under the room's attention. "You did the hard part." He held her gaze. "You told me to fight." Rivera spared them by clapping once softly. "Enough maudlin. Ms. Ellis, you should know. Someone will offer you money for your story. Someone else will offer you disbelief. Neither deserves your time today. Take your boy home. Eat stew. Let your life for once be as quiet as you want it." "I plan to," Mara said. Then after a breath, "For what it's worth, detective, if you ever need someone to tell you which corners have teeth, I'm good at noticing." Rivera's mouth tilted. "I noticed." They left the hospital under another escort. Hearthstone didn't advertise because good security is mostly the kind you don't see. In the elevator, alone for the first time since the press conference, Liam reached out and laced his fingers through Mara's for a brief, careful second. It felt like relief made physical. "Dinner?" he asked, voice hopeful and wrecked. "When I'm out, with you and Jaden, and my parents who will pretend not to adore you both too loudly?" Mara smiled. We already ate all of Evelyn's stew. You're marrying into a situation where I can't ever repay soup debt. Is that a yes? He asked. It's a start with yes, she said, and his grin broke her like a gentle wave. The next day stitched themselves together with news alerts and mundanity. Captain Roth's arraignment trended. Greyhawk's CEO issued a statement that read like it had been written by a lawyer who had forgotten how to be human. A whistleblower surfaced. A city council member thundered. The union bristled and pointedly didn't defend the jammer. Sloan Rivera slept 4 hours in 2 days and still texted, Mara, you good? Like a metronome of care. At Hartston, Clarice posted a discreet note in the back hall. We don't talk to press. We don't talk money. We talk kindness. The staff adopted Mara like a talisman. Guests left her notes at checkout. Thank you for your smile. You helped when my card failed and I cried, and I'm sorry I cried. The lobby began to feel like a ship she could steer through other people's weather. On Friday night, Evelyn insisted on hosting Just Family. Gordon grilled despite the snow because some men refuse the tyranny of weather. Rivera came by late, out of uniform, looking almost like a person for once. She listened to Jaden explain dinosaur urban planning with the solemnity it deserved. She let Liam's mother press leftovers into her hands like contraband happiness. Before she left, she stood with Mara on the porch in the drifting quiet. You changed the ending, Rivera said simply. I changed my route, Mara said. The ending had help. Rivera nodded. Keep the corners. Bad things like straight lines. Detective? What made you trust me? You didn't know me. Rivera's eyes went soft in a way that made Mara suspect there was a person under all that armor after all. Because you stayed, she said. People who stay aren't easy to move. Spring came grudgingly, then all at once. Liam walked out of the hospital under his own power, smarter about his edges and more impatient with bureaucracy that tried to blunt them. The department held a small ceremony nobody televised. A commendation pinned to Mara's thrift store dress looked better than diamonds. She cried anyway, because she had been holding her breath for months and public kindness is a solvent. Hearthstone promoted her to guest services lead before winter even forgave itself. Then to assistant manager after she talked a furious wedding party down from lighting the ballroom on metaphorical fire when the band canceled and she found a jazz quartet with a violinist who made the groom cry. Jaden's Dinosaur City became a mural at the youth center. Miss Rami lobbied the principal to move him into the advanced art track. Gordon taught him how to castle. Evelyn bought him brushes and said it was not spoiling if it served destiny. One evening late, when the city hummed like a patient machine and the apartment smelled like lemon oil and sleep, Mara stood at the window and touched the glass. The deadbolt gleamed. The little camera above the door winked its steady red. Liam sat on the couch with Jaden curled against his side, both asleep in a heap of blanket and night. The chessboard still set because the last conversation had been a lesson. Forks, pins, and how sometimes the best move is to protect a piece you'll need later, even if it looks small. Her phone buzzed. A message from a number she'd memorized before she knew what it would mean. Liam. I told you then. I'll say it again forever. I fought because you told me to. Dinner tomorrow? No stew, pizza. And, if it's not too much, us. She looked at them, the man and the boy who had become her whole map, and typed, yes, us. This wasn't a fairy tale. The city would crack again. Contracts would snake, and human frailty would look for places to hide. Bills would still come. But the force had fought back. Not just the department with its badges and pressers. The other force. The one that begins at a kitchen table with a kid who thinks dinosaurs love cinnamon and travels through a woman's choice to kneel in the rain and say, I'm not leaving you. The night she found him, the street had been a black mirror. Now it was a road. Choices are doors. Nights are strongest at the corners. And kindness, it turns out, is the only kind of armor that makes you bigger when you share it. If you'd walked past, the ending would have belonged to someone else. Because she didn't. The ending shocked the entire force and remade a family.